Good Wednesday, everybody. I'm Mike. Matt's alongside me again for, what is this, Matt? Episode what? What episode we on?
Episode 8.
8. Ocho, right?
Ocho, yeah. Episode 8.
Every time I think of Ocho, I think of Chad Ochocinco.
That's funny you say that because every time I think of Ocho, I think of the movie Dodgeball when they're talking about ESPN 8 the Ocho. That's what I think of when I think of Ocho.
Yeah, I always thought there should be an extra frame 3, and it would be R-rated, and that ties in nice with our guest today. But XF3, because they had XF1 and XF2 for the PBA, and then Jeff Goodyear and I used to joke about this. XF3 would be what everybody really wanted to say that isn't politically correct.
That would be entertaining. I'm sure they would get plenty of viewers. Everybody always wants to hear kind of the R-rated side of things. I think maybe a couple cuss words during, like, oh my God, what a terrible break. It might make for some pretty good entertainment. So that'd be cool.
Yeah, Peterson went there on Monday a couple times when we were trying to set him up some softballs. And he we weren't ready for. But yeah, so welcome back, everybody. I mean, we're happy to have you involved with the program. Remember, we're on YouTube, we're on Facebook Live, and you can interact with our program by submitting questions, and Matt will display them on the screen. Or when Matt's talking, I'll display them on the screen, as he is the producer. In case anything goes wrong, we can blame him. But I also produce a little bit as well. So a couple of things I did want to get to before we get to our guest, and he's been busy. He was on a show right before us with Brad Angelo and Rick Benoit, and I wasn't aware that they even had a show until I was searching Tom Clark this morning, doing our research that we normally do. But hey, shout out to those guys. It's called it's like he'll be able to tell us. It's like 10 pins in the pit or something is the name of the show, or the pro shop. Yeah. So we'll let him do that when we bring him in. But I did want to touch on 2 quick things. The Dan Sheppy romance is continuing. We did become Facebook friends again, and he's been interacting in our show. So Dan, love you. I'm glad we're reconnected. And that all happened through this show. So love connection has been made again between Dan Sheppy and I. The second thing is have you been watching or keeping up with Late Night with Fallon or the Late Show with Jimmy Fallon at all? Have you been?
I haven't been recently, but I know I think Jimmy Fallon's hilarious, and I think that
so he's doing this thing from his house with no audience, right? And it's almost cringeworthy to watch. It's really not funny.
Yeah, it's I've always heard that when you watch like funny sitcoms without the laugh track in the background, that it's almost cringeworthy to watch. And I can imagine them being pretty similar.
Yeah. So he's hosting the Tonight Show from his house at his desk. And he's reading these lines that have been written for him, and there's no audience, and it's just not funny. And I thought about it, and Kim and I were watching it, and I'm like, I'm not trying. I don't know if this is me having a big ego or if this is me just being a complete idiot, but I feel
a combination of the two.
I feel like our show is exactly what he's doing right now. We're not funny either. He's not funny. We're on the same level. So if we brought in a studio audience here and a laugh track, and you could be, my sidekick guy, you could be my Ed McMahon,
I can be your Guillermo to your Jimmy Kimmel.
We're in the wrong business. Yeah, you're better than Jimmy Fallon right now. I'm telling you right now.
Well, I appreciate that, Mike. I really don't know if I believe you.
Well, you are. And, what a great show we had yesterday with Chuck Gardner.
Yes.
A little bit longer program. We did get into the racing. He did try to take us around on a Inside Bowling Cribs tour of his house, disconnected the internet. But it was a great show, and he promoted it very well, and we appreciate that. But I want to introduce our guest today. Many people know him as the commissioner of the PBA Tour, and this guy he has had to navigate some rough waters over the years, and talk about a bowling historian as well. He's very underrated when it comes to bowling knowledge and just overall knowing everything that's happened in PBA history. And he's underrated when it comes to the PWBA as well, because he has a passion for women's professional bowling doing well also, as he did the women's series. And we'll get to that throughout the show today. We'll talk about that a little bit, some of Tom's accomplishments and things that he's done that's been met with people that applauded his efforts, and some people that took to social media and said, hey, this was not a good decision at the time. But we're going to get his thoughts on some of those things. But one thing before I bring Tom on is I started an Inside Bowling show with my friend Doug Lakey about 10 years ago now. It was in 2010 is when we started the show. And Tom came on our show more than any other guest. And Tom always told me that I was doing it right because I always had a co-host that looked better than I. And I think I've done that again today, and I'm looking forward to seeing if Tom agrees with that. And I know he's going to remember that show. But one thing about Tom is he's always believed in me and my passion for bowling, which I've always appreciated over the years, whether he's given me an opportunity to call some action on Extra Frame, whether he's come on shows. And again, he's just doing that again today for us. And his time is precious. He's a smart guy. He's in his role for a position that he deserves because he just knows how to navigate the waters, like I said earlier. But I'm happy to have him on our program here in our first 2 weeks. And we didn't want to have him on beta testing week because our show wasn't that good. Now it's like a D, but it was an F last week. So hopefully he's going to help bring this show up a little bit. Let's bring in our guest this week, the commissioner of the PBA Tour, Tom Clark. Welcome, Tom, to the program. Really appreciate it. Thanks for making some time for us today.
How you doing, guys? Wow. I have major league microphone envy right now. And and yes, you did stick with the idea. Matt Farber, I would say that he's better looking.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. I think I'm going to retire. Thanks for tuning in to the Inside Bowling shows today. We'll catch you guys. Catch you guys later.
But you also alluded to something with the Tonight Show that is similar to what's going on in bowling today with all of these different podcasts. So if you were Johnny Carson back in the heyday of the Tonight Show, you would have seen me be on the Brad Angelo show and said, Tom, you are not coming on this show. We only take people on their first time out. Now that you just shot everything with Brad Angelo, you ruined our show. So Johnny Carson would always say, he would basically tell people, look, Letterman and anybody else that was out there, the guest has to come on my show first, or I don't want them. And that's the way the late night wars work. So now we have the bowling podcast wars with Beef and Barnsey and Belmo and the Morning Bolt and Mike Flanagan, the Inside Bowling, and Brad Angelo, and everybody else that's doing shows. But it actually is pretty cool what you're doing. And you, with that microphone, you are the leader. You're number one.
Wow.
I mean, you can purr into that. You're just purring into that thing. I mean, like, you can just get right next to it like Joe Rogan, you know. You should touch it every once in a while like Joe Rogan does. Well, I don't know. You know, he moves it to his face sometimes.
Yeah, he does.
You watch the Joe Rogan show? He moves it. And I think the better you get with that thing, the more you keep moving up a level. So,
wow, I appreciate it. You know, Dan Patrick's my hero. I watch his show.
Sure.
I watch his show on YouTube, or I listen to it when I'm cutting the grass or whatever I'm doing. And DP last year actually came out on the air and let everybody know about how he's been dealing with some struggles with he's got fog brain based off of some other medical conditions that he's dealing with, and he wasn't sure how much longer he's going to do the show. And that was a really big moment for me, that we just don't know how long these things are going to be around. Like a guy like Dan Patrick, how long he's going to keep doing his show. So I've made a conscious effort ever since he did that show. I'd listen, probably a couple episodes a week, but now I listen to every single show every single week, because I grew up with Dan Patrick as a kid on SportsCenter, and I love the way his take is on things. And right now they're in a lawsuit with Tom Brady right now not a lawsuit, but they got a cease and desist because they create funny T-shirts. And they did Tampa Bay, and they got a cease and desist letter from Tom's lawyers.
He really, I can't believe Brady actually trademarked that. It's really not that funny. It's not that good. So
they're poking fun of it, and we do things like that here too. Like Matt's my Danette, I guess, so to speak, and we did a Tiger Bowler T-shirt around Tiger. We do stupid stuff too. So a lot of similarities there.
Well, Dan Patrick, he grew up, learning from who are my favorite talkers in history. I like David Letterman and Howard Stern. And Dan Patrick was a big Howard Stern fan, and you could learn from the way that they could capture an audience with their own uniqueness, but and fearlessness, really. And that's how you can grab an audience. And guys like him learn from them. And so Dan Patrick's fun to listen to. And I listen to every single show he does is Bill Simmons. And I don't even know if it's because I really like him that much. He's very similar. He's the same age as I am. We have the same perspectives on everything. We watched all the same movies. We lived through all the same sporting events, and we have the same love for sports and everything. I don't agree with everything, but he is really compelling to me. He does a great job. He's always he's like you, Mike, in that he does the research. I mean, he knows what the hell he's talking about. I wouldn't be surprised if, you already know me for 10 years, like you said. I wouldn't be surprised if today you looked up something about me, because that's smart. And when you have some knowledge behind you or some things to ask because you did a little bit of research, and this guy, Bill Simmons, seems to have 50 hours a day to do research. You end up being deeper and more compelling, and that's basically the way I fall asleep nowadays. Is I listen to podcasts and I listen to YouTube, and Bill Simmons and Joe Rogan are really two of the best right now, and I've been doing that with those guys for years. It seems like everyone else is catching up to that now. Now during the day, being able to watch these bowling shows is actually pretty good. Everyone is actually doing a pretty good job at it. When you have, of course, it ends up coming down to the guest, right? I mean, it's like, when you had Dave Lamont and you had Randy Peterson, now those guys know how to talk. They have a great voice. They have experience in front of a camera. They know how to tell a story a lot shorter than I do, like better than me, better than most people. And so they're really good guests to have on. Then you have in bowling, like Norm Duke. When you have Norm, just wait for Norm. When you have Norm, he'll be the best guest you ever had. He's just incredible. But anyway, Matt, don't accept guests. If they go on Brad Angelo's show, just tell them, look, if you're going to pick Brad Angelo and do his show before my show, you're out.
Okay, we'll start doing that. Matt, what did I tell you about Tom as we were prepping for this show? We joke around that we do overnight show prep when we stay up all night. We do a little show prep. What did I tell you about Tom going into this today?
Well, first, before I say that, I like to preface this with I really dig your mug, the I Love New York mug. New York is right here on my mind right now, so I dig that. And also, he said, Tom likes to give lengthy answers, and he likes to give a lot of detail. And so that's something that we prep for.
In other words, I talk too much. You mean I talk too much?
No. Just detail, Tom. And that's why you're so successful, is your attention to detail, like you were touching on before, how Mike always asks these questions. He does his research. He knows what he's talking about, just like you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. In other words, it's too much talk. Go ahead.
No,
Mike talks too much. You're just very smart. There's a difference.
Matt, I think your internet is struggling a bit again today. Tom, are you seeing the same thing?
Yeah. I see he's dragging a little bit.
Yeah.
My audio isn't perfect, just so you guys know. I don't know. That's probably on me, but it's coming in and out a little bit, but it's still, as you know, Mike, that's the key to everything with these shows. I mean, it's like, you can have a great show, but if the audio is off a little bit, or if the lighting's really bad, or, there's little things that can kill the momentum or the chance for a show to get to that next level. And then sometimes being really rough is its own attractiveness to a show. Like, being raw like this, could almost be cool in a way. And so, you kind of like it, but ultimately it better be well done from an audio technical standpoint, or it's never going to have legs. So that's why it's cool that you have that microphone.
Yeah, and I told Matt, I said, I'm gonna Johnny big time you here. I'm ordering this. I got this through Guitar Center, and if you want to go buy something from Guitar Center, all you gotta do is call them on the phone. They'll give you a discount. You just call them up, tell them what you're trying to do. They give you a nice discount. They'll send it to you, free shipping. So that's a little plug for Guitar Center. A lot of people don't necessarily think to go there, but it's cheaper than Amazon if you go to Guitar Center. They'll always hook you up. But Matt, I know as we talked about things, looks like you should be back now. Let's try something here. You good?
Yep, I think so. Is it sound okay?
No, it's not great.
Oh boy, here we go.
You moved routers yesterday, but one thing that's happening, Tom, and you had this happen on the Beef and Barnesy show where your internet connection cut out, is everybody's on the internet in the neighborhood now. It's really changed. Like, I don't think these internet providers are ready for it.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm wondering about that with Wi-Fi, and even thinking about where your router is and where you live and relative to where you are. I'm sure I'm too far away, probably. But there's I've never been a fan of like FaceTime or Zoom or even the Skype. I just never liked it because, honestly, I didn't think people really wanted to stare at my face, to be honest with you. And it was kind of like, does someone want to stare at me while we have a meeting and talking? And I've always shied away from it and just stayed with speakerphone or had phone calls. But then in this new era or age or whatever we're in the middle of here, Zoom, I've actually grown to really like Zoom and think that it's a pretty cool way to have a meeting. And this platform that you guys are using, I mean, it's really effective. And now that everybody's in the same boat and you kind of have to do it, it doesn't feel like you're imposing as much on people. So, I don't know. I clearly the company to have had stock in before this virus was Zoom. So there's going to be a lot of new businesses that come out, that no one thought of before that are suddenly going to be the cutting edge and the place where you want to be in this new world. See Sibo saying hi. Great to hear from him.
Yeah, this platform's great. We were going to do a live show 2 weeks prior to when we actually launched this show, but I couldn't get Wirecast and Zoom to work together. And then all of a sudden I see Barnes and Stu doing their show, and I'm like, how did these pro bowlers figure this out before me? Like, I didn't get it. And
yeah, but Barnes and Stu, they figure everything out. I mean, they've got everything figured out.
Yeah, whether it's scouting pairs, oil patterns, or how to stream on the internet, invest in those guys for sure. And they're going to be our guests actually tomorrow, which
cool.
Good. I got one more thing before I throw it over to Matt for some questions that we prepped for you. But I did want to talk about this mock draft that I did last week on the Beef and Barnesy show. Did you happen to catch my draft strategy?
Yes, I saw most of it. I got your strategy after the second pick. So, I don't think it's a bad strategy personally. I really don't. I was with you.
I mean, you're drafting the whole team, right? And you're at a huge disadvantage by not having 3 Hall of Famers like some of the other teams have to start with. I could have got one surefire Hall of Famer and Rash right out of the gate, but everybody else in the draft pool, I just wanted to separate myself, and it was going to be feast or famine. And I was seeking attention with my team. Wouldn't that be the lead story?
All lefties. I mean, I always get excited when that all lefty team with Scroggins bowls the USBC Open. I'm like, what's going to happen here? I mean, this could be really interesting. It's kind of like you said, feast or famine. It's all in. You guys know my favorite thing outside of bowling is Syracuse basketball. They play this Boeheim strategy. He plays a 2-3 zone. We're going to be the best at that. It might not work, but guess what? We could beat anybody with it. We could win the whole thing with it. We can go to the Final Four with it, with a team that is not as good as half the teams in the field because of a unique one and only strategy. So if you come in and you say, look, my team's going to be all left, you could come in last place or you could win easy, and it's like, why not? Why not take a shot? I don't think it's a bad strategy. I don't think it's going to happen, but you weren't there to predict, right? You were there to do, this is how I'm picking my team.
Yeah, and that show I think was their second best reaching show that they had done, and I thought Goodger's backgrounds that he was presenting and everything else, it was fun. I mean, it was fun, and having Chad on there in a different environment was extremely fun as well. He took it, pretty serious. Chad is he's a student. he had to take it very seriously.
Don't tell me.
Yeah, and
I missed your last thing that you just said, but
yeah, so yeah, he just he's a student. He
going out on me.
I am. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Let's bring Matt back in. Let's make sure he's okay.
I'm here. Can anybody? Is this working now?
Maybe Matt's dragging us down here. He looks like
Matt. You look good on my screen.
Yeah, Tom's looking a little laggy to me. You look good on my screen. We're just having like an internet struggle bus type of day here, but we're gonna get through this, fellas.
Tom, are you good? You think?
Well, the draft. I can hear you now. The draft. The mock draft was really cool. I love the way he put it on the screen, and that was great work by I assume Barnes, and we're going to do something similar. I mean, you'll see the real draft will be something similar to that. I won't give anything away until we all announce it, but we'll be doing the PBA League Draft, and have all the managers on, and can you imagine how awesome it would have been at South Point? We were supposed to do it on March 15th. At South Point on the other side after the first show of the World Series, and we'd have had this huge crowd, and all the players would have been there, and we really did a lot of work to make this the best PBA League Draft ever. The Bolero guys, the new people, Carissa and Coley, and they really were into thinking, let's make the draft special, and so we were investing a lot in it, and so it was sad to have to cancel that, and that was the day that we did go live, but with the World Championship, but there was no way to do a draft that day. But it will make it cool in this type of format. It won't be a Zoom. I think we'll work with somebody. We're going to work together and produce it as best we can remotely.
Well, you can take notes Thursday night. Big night Thursday night. NFL draft coming up.
Yeah, and I watched the WNBA draft as well. And they did it virtually with a host at ESPN, and then they threw to the commissioner, basically in her basement, like me, like I'm in my office in my house, and it was pretty good. It was good the way they did it, and they had people ready to come on and call in.
Matt, that's your cue.
Yeah, that's me right there. So, Tom, first, we really appreciate you coming on the show today. We know you're busy. We know you're just coming off the other one. And, we talked about what we did in our prepping earlier and how we were talking about what to expect, what we want to talk about. And I think one of the things that we really obviously agreed on is that in order to be in your position, you have to be a very smart guy and a very talented guy. And so the main question that I want to ask, can you hear me all right? Do you got me?
I'm losing you. Wait, hold on. Let me make sure that everything's off here.
Man, I'll tell you what.
Come on, guys. You figure it out. I'm overeating.
Are you there?
I was about to pull you up.
You want me to let me try to. You want me to get back in and see if I come back in better?
Yeah,
it was strong for an hour with.
Don't worry, it's Matt and his technical difficulties. That's gone to your world.
And yes, no, it's definitely me. Do you hear me okay now, Mike? Is everything good here?
Yeah, you're good.
I think it's all right. So Tom's gonna get back in here. This just goes to show everybody. Wow, man, put it on a any type of a show here is really a struggle. It's hard. It's hard, man. This is just unfortunate, incredible. But whether or not Tom likes it, we're going to ask him these questions, and we're going to put him on the spot.
His screen there. He'll come back.
What kind of cereal are you snacking on over there, Mike?
It's just a plain Jane Raisin Bran. Just a plain
Raisin Bran kind of guy. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, Joe.
Not a cereal guy whatsoever, actually. I think that's also he says we can hear you now, Tom, and then have Tom use Chuck's setup. That's hilarious. All right.
Let's bring Tom back in.
There he is. Let's see if it's working. Rory needs to get off the Xbox.
Yeah, that's the real problem.
Son needs to get off the Xbox. So his neighborhood everybody just got on Netflix, I guess. So while we're waiting for Tom to work this out here, I do have a follow up to the bowling ball story.
Yeah.
We talked about this critical mass that I had, that there weren't many made. This is a pearl critical mass. I wanted to pull it down and show everybody. It's 16 pounds, but this was the Shepster gift, I guess, that he gave me on the show yesterday. So pretty proud of this one.
Yeah, that's a cool one. You know, it's interesting to look back at older bowling balls and what they sell for. And what's interesting to me is the difference that older bowling balls sell for just based upon the weight. You know, like if you had that in a 15 pounds, as opposed to having that in a 16 pounder or 14 pounder, the price really does vary.
It does.
I think it's interesting. You know, I think it's also always interesting to see, you know, and I also think something that's interesting is that people, you know, they'll go crazy over an old ball, yet you got to remember that those balls were made to perform on the oil patterns that were, you know, designed at that specific point in time. And you remember this ball being a super strong, flippy, angular ball. And then, you know, you put it on today's oils conditions and it's probably not even going to be close to the same, you know?
Let's see.
Sorry. Hopefully we're back.
I think we're in here.
I think you guys are good.
Tom, can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Oh my God, this is perfect. This is like a dream come true here. All right. So, so, you know, we were doing our prep for the show. We were excited to have you on and we're grateful that you took the time to come on today. One of the questions that, or, you know, one of the things that we talked about when we were prepping is the amount of pressure that comes with being in your position and how every decision that you make is under intense scrutiny. You know, people that are in really important positions in the industry, yourself, Chad Murphy, every single time you guys make a decision, there's a lot of scrutiny. There's a lot of backlash. You know, you always hear about the negative comments that people have to say. What is it like having a job where everything is under such scrutiny? Everything is always analyzed to the finest point.
Well, you know, it goes both ways. I mean, it's something I certainly don't mind. It's fine. It's fine. It's like I have a job where everyone else is an expert at that job, you know, and so
right.
You know, you just kind of live with that. And the thing is, it's really not a job that you know, anyone can really define easily. It's not like there's a commissioner's school, you know. There's very few, you know, people that do the types of things that we do. So it's a unique position, and people come at it from different angles and different directions, and different things are important to different people. I think that where I'm actually happy with my own situation when it comes to that kind of scrutiny is I and a lot of people working today came through this internet era, the social media era, where there's way more, you know, feedback and way more experts about everything out there.
Right.
And, you know, at first that was not that easy for me to handle. And when I would read, I would get, you know, you almost get addicted to reading, you know, criticism and stuff like that, or, you know, praise or take. So, you know, once you believe the criticism or take that seriously, you realize you can't take any of the praise seriously either. Just, you know, it's like, right. Well, I believe this guy, but I don't believe this guy, you know. But it was pretty mountainous at first, and it felt like it wasn't fair, you know, to have to deal with a certain level of criticism from people that really weren't.
Well, Mike, if you had to give the rest of Tom's answer, how would you continue to? Oh, he's back. Is he back? He might be back.
I'm gonna phone his neighborhood. Everybody get off Xbox and Netflix.
Everybody stop. Just everybody. Here we go. He's back. He's back. He's here. He's here.
I don't know why that one popped out. That one just, the screen went boom. You know, I don't know what that was.
No worries. No worries.
But anyway, you know, I think getting to the other side of dealing with social media criticism and being as comfortable as I am now, and I always was very comfortable that I was doing the best that I could, and that nobody was going to work harder and no one was looking at as many angles as I ever was going to look at. No one was searching out as much information. I was always confident in all of that, and always confident in that we were moving forward towards a goal. But it was very defeating at times to have to deal with it. But coming to the other side of it makes me feel like I have a unique experience that is something I really would look forward to teaching people how to handle, because as new people come through and have to deal with that type of criticism, I think they would want to hear from people who've experienced it. And before like 2008, 9, 10, what in there, before then, no one had experience with it. It didn't exist. I mean, the number of people that had any experience with, being criticized was like in a newspaper, months after something happened or something. It wasn't as daily an onslaught of media attention and social media attention from people who had a voice all of a sudden that never even had a voice in the past. So there was no experience to go back on. And a lot of us have lived through that experience and now can kind of teach people how to deal with it, because everyone's still, anyone is lying to you if they say it doesn't bother them that someone says they're an idiot, or whatever it is. Of course it's going to bother you, of course. And or even if they're, I always said it usually only bothered me when they when they were a little bit right, like because I know too, I could criticize every single thing that we do every single day, everything about, even just bowling and sports and in media is always about the next day, the next chance, the next shot, the next game. And I've always been that way. I've always felt like I'm planning towards the next one and the next one. And then once it's gone, I could kill it. I mean, I could just destroy it and then say, look, we're going to do better. And here's why. And here's the 50 things that we could do better on this thing. And then keep getting to that next step and that next step to do better and better with whatever tools that you have. And I think that's the type of person that you want to be, is somebody that's always looking forward, moving to the next one. And that's what makes this time very, very difficult, trying to deal with not knowing when the next shot's coming and not knowing when the next chance is coming. I used to work in media. I used to work in newspapers. And, that was, I worked at USA Today, and it was an incredible team. And it was the #1 newspaper in the country and 2 million circulation, total competition every day with ESPN, the New York Times, the Washington Post, Sports Illustrated, trying to beat them every day and working to knowing the audience was so large and that everything you did had an intensity about it. You had to plan for each moment. But as soon as that day's paper was out, you looked at it, you ripped it to shreds, and you moved to the next one. And that's the same way I kind of look at everything. And so, you can't get stuck in the past or get dragged down by people hurting you. And I've fallen prey to it a little bit, but like after this, what I'm gonna say, and you're gonna say that I talk too much.
No, I'll never say that, Tom. I'll say that about Mike. Sometimes it's like kind of the MO here is like Mike will be like, "Hey, you got time to hop on a quick call real quick? Just want to show you." And then I look at the call thing when it's on speakerphone. It says 2 hours and 4 minutes. And I'm like, oh, another quick call here with Mike. This is great, and I love every second of it. But I think it's really, and I know Mike came on and gave a big thumbs up. And I think one of the things that you talked about that's really important is the need to teach younger people how to deal with certain experiences and how to deal with certain pressures that they may not have had to deal with before. And, I've worked with a lot of athletes in coaching, and having to teach players how to deal with practicing without coming back and using social media during your practice routines or getting distracted by different technologies that are out there. Everything has completely changed. And I think you're totally spot on with saying that you have to be forward thinking. You have to be very aggressive and always, trying to find the next big thing that can make the sport, make the tour, make all the professionals, make the organization grow. And I think one of, and also at the same time, deal with the negatives that come with being so forward thinking. And that's the people doubting you, calling you crazy. And you really have to be confident in what you're doing to be able to continue to execute that and to enjoy what you're doing. And I think one of the early examples of that from your time as commissioners, when you introduced the PBA Women's Series in 2007, and you were creating this essentially a mini tour for female bowlers to come out and to showcase their talents. and you caught a lot of backlash for it. And, it was like, why are you bringing, why are you mixing the two? Why, why is this happening? And then, we fast forward whatever it was, 7, 8 years, and the PWBA tour is out here and it's flourishing. And I find it hard to believe that the PWBA would be able to be where it is today without something like the PBA Women's Series coming into play and kind of laying that groundwork. So, what is it like, being able to execute those ideas and then see down the line that like, hey, okay, this was a good idea, this was successful, and this was the right direction?
Yeah, well, at the time I was actually with the USBC, and so the USBC, and I was in charge of marketing, and other things for the USBC, and so the USBC's strategic plan, was to grow the sport and to get people to identify with bowling as a sport. And having no women's professional bowling, bothered me. I'm a fan. I think it's incredible to watch. It's great bowling. And it's just a whole other section of the community that can compete. And there's a big part of the USBC. It was almost 50% of the bowlers, were women. And so, trying to give them a vehicle and then working with the PBA, that way we were able to generate the funding to be able to afford that. And so, and now could you sit back and criticize and say, yeah, but I don't think I really like watching the women on the men's shows. I completely get that criticism, and I understand it, but that's all we had, as an industry, as bowling, was that couple hours that the PBA had on ESPN. And so being able to get the women out there and give them a chance to compete and stick with the game, and have the best women bowlers be given the spotlight and the exposure of being on TV, I think that it helped bridge a gap between having no PWBA at all to having a chance to have the PWBA again. And it gave more people a chance to believe in wanting to take up bowling as a sport and understand it as that way. One of the great moments that ever happened from a rating standpoint and from a media standpoint in PBA history was when Kelly Kulick won the Tournament of Champions. I mean, and that was fair and square from the standpoint of they all started at the same exact time. There's no handicap pins. There's no advantages at all. She was in the field, and nobody would have bet on her to win. And she bowled the whole tournament, 48 games, all the match play, made the show, won on the show. It was really remarkable. And the only way she gets there is because of the women's series. And we had the first ever PBA Women's World Championship, and had it at the World Series of Bowling. And she won that. And that's how she got in the Tournament of Champions. And people criticize that. They shouldn't be, but they forget that there's always been different ways to be a champion and get into the Tournament of Champions. There's been stretches that the traditionalists love more than ever. That was like the last 32 winners or the last 48 winners, whatever the number was, for many years. And then they started letting international champions in and with different sponsors. And it always has to do, with the climate at the time and the financials and the support and the world and the media at the time that you make decisions. And at that time, that developed, and it developed into one of the great moments in the history of the game. And I was always very, very proud of that. And I root on the women's tour every week.
Yeah, and you talked about really, a couple of monumental moments in the sport of bowling. Kelly Kulick winning that event kind of really opened the door for female bowlers to really come in and continue and start to compete alongside with the men. So not only having the PWBA tour, but now you've got bowlers like Maria Jose Rodriguez and Danielle McEwen, and countless others that travel around the world. Liz Johnson is another one that constantly is out there competing against the men and women. And I think one of the things as a bowler that has been a little hard is that there are so many different organizations and there are so many events that are always going on that there sometimes tends to be conflicts of schedule, and it tends to be difficult not only for the organizations because then they lose bowlers, and also for the bowlers because they lose out on different opportunities. How, as an industry and as a sport, do you think that we can get better at working together to schedule so all the organizations can benefit completely, to the fullest extent from having as many athletes and all the attention they deserve, and also the bowlers getting to go out there and compete as much as they possibly can?
Yeah, I really think that there's been, I have to start off by saying there's been a lot of strides in that area, and I give a lot of credit.
Absolutely.
I give a lot of the credit to the BPAA, Strike 10, Go Bowling. Go Bowling, a few years ago decided to invest money in women's tour, the PBA tour, the Go Bowling PBA tour, and it's helped us, I think, be on as close to a same page as we can be. I think that for a while, World Bowling also was a similar situation where, we started to say, how can we work together? I mean, the PBA always, when I first came in, had more than a vision, but a goal to make us a global sport. And it moved along in that way. And then World Bowling being a partner and having someone there, Kevin Dornberger at the time, that we were familiar with, made that possible to schedule together and share, in the victories together. So I think we've gotten better as an industry. It's always been something that you knew that everybody needed to work harder on, and everybody believes that their piece is the most important, and they should. I mean, that's what you're fighting for all the time. I'll tell you that I think the PBA being on national television and having the largest audience possible is the most important piece in the pot. But somebody else will say, yeah, but the bowling center at home, getting the right people in the doors and keeping them as players, and is the most important piece. I mean, there's a lot of different. You come at it from different angles, and that's why I think I really appreciated Go Bowling. I appreciate Bolero now. Investing in the PBA, they have this many bowling centers, and so they believe that exposure on TV is important to growing the game, and it can work. So I think everybody's on the same wavelength that you're on, and how can we work together? I see things in other sports all the time. I mean, the NBA started the WNBA and basically funded, and they believe that bringing in that level that kind of audience will support all of basketball. And I actually saw today on Twitter that Roger Federer came out and said, look, the ATP tour in tennis and the WTA tour, which is the women's side, we need to work together. Let's just have all of our events be together and have the women's events and men's events and schedule together, same rules, same. I mean, and when a guy like Federer says that, everybody listens and everybody says, "Oh, that's a great idea," And I've been very close to tennis throughout all my career, and very close to golf through all my career, and working with the leaders in those sports. I was the golf and tennis editor for 5 years at USA Today, and would go to all of their meetings, and they they knew how to use that media, and that's how I got to be friends with Billie Jean King and some other people in tennis, and you learn a lot from them about how working together is more important. And yet you watch them struggle. They're still struggling today. It's not easy to work together. I mean, everybody wants to be the boss, everybody wants to be, in charge. So you have to know how to bend, you have to know how to figure out what is important to some people, what's important to you, what you're going to fight for, what you're going to bend, and what you're going to say, well, if we can just get to this next step, I can give up this. This isn't ideal. But if I say no, then we'll never get to the next step. So you keep moving to the next step, towards that ultimate goal. And, I think that working together comes from relationships. So, I mean, the guy in charge of the BPA is Frank DeSocio. There's been years when he and I were mad at each other. This went one way, this went this way. But we always remained, friends. Besides bowling, and so maintaining the relationship was one of the reasons why ultimately we become incredible partners together in advancing the game. And I kind of look up to guys like that in that realm that know how to maintain relationships. I mean, there was a time in my life when if somebody pissed me off, I'd be like, they're dead to me forever. That's it. Right. I'm that's my enemy. And some people use that to fuel themselves. And some people would use that to say, okay, that's how I'm gonna win, is because I got this enemy. And then, but then you kind of learn, well, no, it's much better to maintain relationships, work together with people, and move forward.
Absolutely. And, I think that's, again, a really important thing that you're talking about is just the importance of collaboration and working together, because if the pie grows to be bigger, then everybody's got a bigger piece of the pie. And you mentioned some breaking news. You mentioned Federer coming out on Twitter, a lot of different organizations talking. And I just want to pull up, I'm going to bring Mike back in here, but I want to pull up here, some other breaking media coverage that I saw on Twitter not too long ago, and I just want to get your quick feedback on this stud strapper wheeling this thing.
Oh, it's awesome.
Yeah, what was this? What was this event?
This was Syracuse, New York. That's me, by the way.
Yeah, look at that hair, man.
Your name is spelled right down below.
You look at the two photos. I see my mom and dad in the background too. See right over my shoulder, my right shoulder. That's my dad with the black hair. Where's the arrow? Yeah, right. That's my dad, and my mom is right next to him, right there.
Right here.
And these jokers in the row behind, they were my junior bowling team in Syracuse. It was something called Challenge Bowling. Every Saturday morning, there was a show that was on. It was taped, I think, on Tuesday night on two special lanes that were built at the NBC affiliate in Syracuse, New York. In the basement of the television channel, they had lights all set up around this bowling center. They did Bowling for Dollars in there. So they had a weekly show, Bowling for Dollars. They had Challenge Bowling on Saturday. And then on Sunday they had the Sunday Syracuse Bowls. It was called Syracuse Bowl, and that was for adults. And it was a King of the Hill format, which I'd love to, and I've used before, and I want to bring back. And the same guy, the winner, would come back each week, and we bowled on those special lanes. The announcer on that show that you were just watching was a guy named Marty Pirano, who's a 4-time PBA titleist, lefty. The greatest bowler in Syracuse history, and he was the announcer, and he was the biggest proponent of junior bowling in Syracuse, and he made that thing work every week. There was qualifying in all the local centers, so I won my spot on that show, and then got to bowl on TV, and and that was a yellow dot, by the way, that I'm hooking the whole lane with.
You paved the way for guys like Belmo to come out here and hook the whole lane. I'd like to see them put their fingers in the yellow dot and watch it wheel like that.
Well, I seriously grew up just watching Mark Roth and Marshall Holman. I mean, that's who I wanted to bowl like. They use the yellow dot, and every kid, if you were at the top level of bowling in that was probably the early '80s. I mean, you wanted to bowl like those guys, and you learned how to rip on it from them. I probably put more on it than Mark Roth and Marshall Holman. But that's the same thing that happens through history. I mean, look at Chris Barnes. He's my age. I mean, he grew up watching those guys, and when he bowled them when he was a teenager on that show that everybody's seen on YouTube, when he bowls against Roth and Holman, I mean, his ball is moving compared to theirs. I mean,
oh yeah.
I mean, he's taken bowling to another level, and you see the same thing happen today. And EJ Tackett. Imagine EJ Tackett going back in time and bowling back then. You say, "What? Look at this guy. He's from another planet." Right. But anyway, that was a really cool show on special lanes. I would love that type of possibility exists today to do things like that. And let me tell you another trivia about that show. Dave Ryan, who you hear as an announcer on PBA shows. Yep. He went to Syracuse University. So his first job was at WSYR in Syracuse. He hosted that show for a couple of years as well. So before he ever did any bowling, his first bowling was Syracuse Bowls and Challenge Bowling.
Wow, that's incredible. Yeah, we had Dave on last week. We spoke a bunch about Syracuse, but that's really cool.
Yeah,
really cool.
Really cool experience. You know who else worked on that show? Before I forget, Joey Chacon.
Sure do.
Joey, who works on the PBA shows now in our truck, doing stats and graphics and things like that. And he was a great player in college, obviously, and a good PBA pro. He used to keep score as a little kid. He would sit near Marty Pirano and he'd keep score for him. So Joey was involved with that show as well.
Wow! If only the people knew who was in that building at that time and what the kind of impact that those people would have on the sport of bowling. That's really
that is fun. It is interesting when you think about it.
Yeah. So, Mike, you've been on the sidelines here for quite a bit. I hope that you finished all of your cereal, unless you reloaded and got a second bowl going there.
I'm good now.
You're good.
Isn't the kid great, Tom? Isn't he awesome with his questions and his queuing up all his stuff?
Yeah. See, that's work. That's doing research. What he did with Dave Lamont, I was afraid he'd do something like that with me. So thankfully,
I mean, you could. I could pull together some clips real quick.
He's a pro. He's a pro.
I have a couple of things here. So I like to collect a lot of knickknacks and things. I spend a lot of time on eBay, and I collect things like bowling cards. These are the old AMF cards that I got myself, And then it was about maybe a year and a half ago. You may remember this message I sent you, Tom. But I scoured the internet, and I like to look for obscure things. And I came across these sets 1 through 10 of the 40 PBA stars, such as Don Carter, Dick Weber, Johnny Petraglia cards. I have them right here. Yeah. And the person that shipped them to me was a Tom Clark from Syracuse, New York. And I sent you a message and I said, hey, aren't you still living in Wisconsin? Because I ordered these bowling cards, these old retro bowling cards on eBay. And you said, no, it's probably my pops. It's probably my dad that did that. Yeah. So is that the reason why you were so into sports, is because of your dad?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. That's what we did together. That's what we do. That's what we bowled. He got me into bowling. He got me into sports. He's actually, that set you have there of those cards. I wouldn't be surprised if he had like 1,000 of them. And that's why he's moving some on eBay and things like that, because he's actually become like one of the best sports collectors in the country. At the sports collectors convention, he wins awards. Like they give him awards for like the best set and things like that. And he got into it because of me, because when I was a kid, I got into baseball cards and football cards and basketball cards and things like that. And then when I came back from college, I had been working at I knew how to design newspapers, and this was before the internet. I mean, it was in the early 90s, 92, something like that. And I had been the editor of my college newspaper. And so I loved designing newspapers, magazines, putting stories together, packaging the whole thing. So when I got out of school, I started my own business, which was a sports magazine. And at the time, in the early 90s, baseball cards were just off the chart, huge. There were literally at least 20 sports card stores in Syracuse alone. So I was in Syracuse and I started this magazine, and all of my sponsors, I went around to every card shop and said, $50 and I'll put your ad in here, your business card, or hey, if you want a full page, it's $250. And I would basically sell, and they all had to get in or they were going to fall off. I mean, they had to get in this thing. And then I free distributed this magazine that was about cards, and my father, got involved with helping me with that, just in terms of, in all kinds of ways, my mother and father both, because it was my own business. So he started getting back into cards because of it, because we go to all these card stores, and now he's become like one of the greats. He almost probably got too addicted to it. I'll tell you one thing about him. He's a Don Mattingly fan to a degree. He was such a big Don. He has everything Don Mattingly. When people buy things about Don Mattingly, they're usually buying it from him.
Wow.
And that's kind of like his business. After he worked for years at a power company as an engineer, but all he's been doing since, and what he did for years, was just eBay and collecting and dealing with those guys.
Have you and your dad had conversations about what you've done in your career, and had those beer moments where you get to sit down and reflect a little bit about just what you've been able to accomplish and what he thinks of what you've done in your career?
Yeah, but he's like everybody else. He knows what to do better than me. So I do. He's a bowler. I mean, this is when and so I deal with the same things. He's from Syracuse. These guys all have opinions about what needs to happen, where it needs to go. But I know that he's definitely proud. I mean, he's probably the #1 Extra Frame subscriber, and now the #1 Flow Bowling subscriber. He watches every minute of the thing. And I think back, I go, when I started working at the PBA, it was a pretty big deal. I mean, he and I I grew up watching the PBA with him. We've talked about it for years, and so to go work for the PBA was a big deal. And one of my first years was the 50th anniversary of the PBA, and we had a big gala at Red Rock in Vegas, and I was kind of in charge of the event, at least to a degree, and
it was the Tournament of Champions in 2010, right?
Yeah. It was a TOC week and Hall of Fame induction week, and I had a lot of influence. Oh, you got it. Yeah, that was all. Were you there? You weren't there, were you?
No, but it's hanging right above my desk, and this is the one that was all autographed by all the players.
Amazing. Yeah, it was a great night. But what I felt pretty proud about was I invited my mother and father out to that event, and who's at my table but Mark Roth, Marshall Holman, so to have, and he knew they were my heroes, and to have those guys, be friends of mine now and sit at my table and my mom and dad at that same table. And Mike J was also at the table too. And not to forget about him. He was the MC. So he was the MC of the event. And so he would have to get up, and we had a great table in the front. And so having Mark and Marshall and then my dad at that table with my mom, that was pretty cool. That was around the time I called your show. Yeah. 2009, 2010, right in there.
Yeah, it sure was. We've got a few minutes left here with you. I think something else that I wanted to get into that Matt touched on a little bit, but over the years when the Microsoft guys owned the PBA, you've shared some conversations with me and publicly as well. I've heard you talk about it, where they wanted more ratings to attract more sponsors, and the traditional formats weren't working. And over the years, you've had to try so many different things to try to generate revenue, interest in bowling. And you changed it so much, so many different times. But I think a lot of people don't realize that you were kind of forced into a position by your bosses saying, if that didn't work this year, I believe they went all in on whatever you were doing, your plan, and committed to it and believed in you. Then the next year, if the results weren't there, then it was, okay, well, what are we going to try next? And you having to deal with that for a long period of time. A couple of really big successes that you had out of that that I wanted to touch on was when television needed to be taped or done all at one time, you came up with this concept, the World Series of Bowling, and it's stuck till today. And in my opinion, is one of the key things under your leadership or when you were involved that is going to put you in the PBA Hall of Fame. Personally, it's personal belief. And then you also tried to get celebrities involved with the PBA League, which was another huge initiative, creating logos for all these teams, all these cities, the managers, all of that. Could you touch on just kind of what you had to deal with trying to keep the PBA afloat with doing these different formats, and specifically the World Series of Bowling and the PBA League, which I think are two of the best things that you had done?
Thanks. I appreciate that. Yeah. I kind of look at what's happening in sports today and can draw a parallel, because when you look at like Major League Baseball, just for example, and they have to postpone the season, cancel the season so far, they can't start. And it trickles out that they're coming up with different ideas. And one of the ideas is we'll move the whole Major League Baseball to Arizona and play 5 games a day in the same stadium without fans, and move them through and keep everybody in the same place. And we'll do it all this way. And in other words, they are putting their thinking out way outside the box of what they thought was even possible to figure out how to keep it going. Same thing with the NBA. Well, we can't do the season. We'll do the whole NBA finals in Las Vegas in one building, and we'll make it 1 game elimination. They're not doing it yet, but that's on the table and they're thinking about it. The PBA was in similar situations through the years where we're in a desperate situation. There isn't the revenue. We would hit our own iceberg as a sport and as a television sport that they're hitting now. And so you have to come up with creative alternatives. And so to be able to come up with a creative alternative like the World Series of Bowling that brought us, we were all in Detroit for a month and the first one. And we bowled all these tournaments and then bowled all the finals and did them all in a row so we could save money, but with an eye towards growing in certain areas like international players, making it more appealing for them because of that. Growing in terms of different patterns at the same house and making a tournament be a cumulative, of that. These are all things that were kind of new, definitely new for the PBA. And they've all sort of survived and become part of the PBA because it wasn't just a matter of, well, let's just figure out how to get this done and save money. That wasn't it. It was, how can we get this done, save money so that we can actually do it, but make it iconic, make it special, make it important. And there were always little steps along the way that helped get you there. And some of them were not great ideas, and we kept trying a lot of different things. But I do draw a lot of parallels between what sports are going through now and what the PBA had to go through with that. With the league. Again, it was another time. We've had to reboot on certain eras at certain times, and we're probably at that point now where, okay, what's the reboot? And it was actually a reboot when we got to Fox. How are we going to reboot it? The reboot of Fox, being on Fox, was a PBA playoff system and having tournaments have a point system so you can get into a playoffs and stretch a playoffs out for 10 shows and make that compelling television. And so it's not always that it's never that I sit down and say, this is what I want the PBA to be. This is going to be it. It can't. The only way that it could happen, you need so much buy-in to just get as many pieces of what you want done, and that just comes with a lot of it's politics. I mean, a lot of it is conversations, relationships, business interests, media realities, and taking all of the pieces of it and getting enough people to buy in along the way. That other people deserve credit, like the World Series of Bowling, and you bring that up. Yes, I'll tell you right now, that was my thing. That was my idea. I had a whole PowerPoint. Here's what we got to do. This is what it's going to be. But Fred Schreier was the CEO at the time. He was the commissioner. He was at the time, and he's the one that gave that a green light. Without that green light, it doesn't happen. So a person like that, at any step of the way, there are a lot of people involved. It's never going to be just one person coming up with exactly the way they want it. It's always going to come from somebody giving the go ahead, someone funding so. But I don't know if that answers your question, but survival, sometimes breeds something that's special. I've been watching your shows and all these shows, and we all want to say how great bowling is because we are all bowlers and we do. I could just watch Belmo versus Norm Duke and I'm done. This is good enough for me. I'm in. I mean, nothing is going to be more exciting. I love every other sport. I'd rather watch it if the Super Bowl was on. I'd probably watch Belmo versus Norm Duke and any pros in a professional bowling tournament. But while we all want to say how great the game is, and we all want to say how great certain matches or a tournament or a memory or all aspects of it, it's not great enough to get us to the point where there's 20,000 people watching this right now because they got to hear what's going to be said. So we have to keep figuring out how do we get to those next steps and not be complacent or believe in what we sort of like traditional things. We have to keep fighting in our sport, and that's what I like. And I came into bowling now that I've been working in bowling now since 2005, working in it. That's 15 years, and before that, I used to write about it. I used to and used to be involved in that level. Now people sort of think I'm establishment in a way, and it always makes me laugh because when I came in, it was all, what can we do differently? Here's the ideas. Here's ways to grab attention again because we need it back because there isn't enough attention. How do we get the attention so that a television network wants to pay us a lot of money so that we're on their network? And how do we get it so an advertiser wants to sponsor the PBA? And so, it was constantly coming up with new ideas, and because you can't just roll out the same thing and expect that to happen. And And so that was me. I was really a change agent. And so now if I'm, I need to keep remembering that's my DNA. That's what I am. And so you have to keep redefining. You have to keep figuring out new ways. You cannot get complacent.
No, absolutely good advice for sure, man. We're out of time with you today. Love to have you back.
You don't have to. We could stay on all day if you want. I'm sure it's, I actually like that about the Joe Rogan show. And that
that's true.
There's times they go like 3 hours, and you go, how did they do that? And you go, you know what? It went pretty quick.
Yeah, it does go quick. It always goes fast talking things over with you. And I certainly appreciate the time and all the support over the years that you've given me and all the goofy things I got going on too. I'm trying to navigate the economical trenches of bowling too, and try to provide a livelihood and just try to do good for bowling. Sometimes you make decisions. Some people don't like it. Sometimes you make some enemies. I've pissed you off a couple times. That's why earlier in the call, when you said that, you just got to let that stuff go, I popped on the screen for a minute because of your personality that's allowed us to continue our relationship. So I just certainly appreciate the time again, man.
Oh, and I've never been mad at you. That's for sure. Now, I think everybody needs to get to a point where they can disagree with each other and say it right to their face. That's the time to do it. And I've always, you guys were talking about the social media guys before. It's been extremely rare that anyone has ever come up to me and said anything other than, how much they really appreciate everything and how great everything is.
So great, Tom. We love
you. Yeah, right. Except Tom Doherty. Yeah, he always gives me shit. So.
Yeah, well, he doesn't like anybody.
He doesn't like anything. I always like that guy. I'm telling you, I always liked Doherty. I always like there's a lot of them that I always I'm a big fan of professional bowlers. I like their mentality, really. There's even ones that people think I wouldn't, and because they've been critical, and I'm like, you don't understand. I love that guy. I root for him. Chris Barnes is trying. He's desperately looking for attention here.
Yes,
he's right. He's writing.
Yeah,
he's writing. No after watch my show today. I'm on with Steve Beef Stew. Chris Barnes is somebody that's helped me a lot through the years because I know I can bank things off him, and he's like that. He's not. We just talk to each other and say where we disagree, and we're not going to hold a grudge against each other. We're just going to be like, yeah, we know we both of us want the best. That's what we want. So it doesn't even hurt a little, when he criticizes. I get mad at him. I remember times getting mad at him, but I want to talk to him again the next time. I want to bank more off him because, like we said before, he's always thinking ahead. He's figuring out his edge. He knows how to get to the 3 o'clock, Beef and Barnsby. Oh man. Well, guys, yeah, I appreciate what you guys are doing, and love to talk anytime and figure out how we can keep moving things forward.
Yeah, maybe I'll give the show to you to work with Matt, and I'll just step away, and you can do the show.
Yeah, I think that's why Mike kind of popped in like halfway through a conversation with a thumbs up just to let him know, like, hey, this is the Inside Bowling Show, and I'm still here, and Tom Clark's not going to steal it from me.
There's only one way I would do that.
Send you this mic?
That microphone.
Yeah. Box right here. I'll ship it to you. One thing I got to do.
No, you've come along. You've come along. I know. I just got through saying I hate all this stuff where we have to tell each other how great everybody is and how great everything is. But anybody in bowling's got to look up to the idea that you've done everything pretty on your own. And found partners, found investors, because they saw that you were going to have a plan. And you weren't going to just have a plan and then not do it. And you were going to, actually follow through and go in this different direction and show that you're going to put in the work. It's going to be 24 hours a day. Anybody who thinks it's easy to have a business, that's why I love working with the ball companies too. And, this Storm and Brunswick and Ebonite and Motive, those guys, what they've done. I mean, that's 24 hours a day to make this stuff work. And, anybody that's had this much length of time working in this industry like you, not even really for someone, for yourself, that is I want to be able to do that someday. I mean, that's pretty cool. So congrats to you. And Matt, you've latched yourself on to the right guy. Plus, you're just better looking.
Yes, that's it. Honestly, that's it. I'm well educated, but I think I'm brought on for my for being better looking than Mike. So I'll take it.
Oh man,
appreciate the words, man.
Yeah, appreciate it all, Tom. Thank you so much.
No, it's great. But I wish I could whisper into a mic like that.
Hey man, I'll send you the link to this thing. You're booked on so many shows, I can hook you up.
No, I wasn't the first guest. This morning Bolt, they don't ask me to come on. I don't know what's going on.
Oh, they will. They'll get.
Oh no! At this point, I'm going to be like Johnny Carson. No, I don't go on these shows. I'm not the 10th. I mean, come on. I was okay with Dave Lamont and Randy Peterson and Dave Ryan and who you've had. I'm okay.
We need to have. We'll have a telethon one day where we're raising money like for 48 hours or something straight. And you can anchor that program with me. We'll do shifts because we could talk forever. There would never be dead air.
Right. Yeah. I came on with the whole idea of talking to you about French Montana, actually.
Oh.
And we didn't get to it.
No, we didn't.
Montana.
You won't. Well, you should have me back on because I think he dropped a new album. He was trending today. So that's why he became top of mind. And it was the greatest upset in the history of the Professional Bowlers Association.
Yeah, it was.
Is when Frenchie won the Chris Paul with Ronnie Russell. And there's a story there that if someone does a documentary on that event, it would be so compelling. It would be.
30. It needs to happen.
It would be. Oh, if they did a 30 for 30 on the time French Montana won a PBA event, I'm telling you, man, the interview, it would be incredible. We'll do it next time.
Yeah. Thanks, Tom. We appreciate it. We'll have you back on soon.
Thanks a lot, guys. All right.
Well, ran long again when you get another winded guest today, which was great, Matt.
Great.
What did you get from today? I know you don't know Tom as well as I do, but what did you take from today's episode?
I just think that there's a lot of work that goes on behind the curtains. I think in any job, in any industry, I think that there's always a lot of work that has to be done, and not a lot of people really understand that. And I think it's great to learn about all of that, all of the work that people in positions like Tom have to go through to bring these events to life, to bring these events to fruition. And I think it's just interesting to learn, and you gain a lot of respect for these people.
Yeah, not an easy job. Probably one of the toughest jobs in bowling over the last 10, 15 years. What he's
undoubtedly.
Had.
And it would be an easier job, right? If bowling was the size of the NBA or the NFL. There'd be some aspects that would be easier, some that would be harder, of course. But again, like you mentioned earlier, he's had his back up against the wall a couple of times as the commissioner of a professional sports organization that's faced a lot of adversity over the past decade or two. And so it's really cool to learn what goes through his mind, what's going on, and how kind of we're looking forward to continue growing the sport together.
He's a survivor and a fighter and loves bowling, loves sports, loves his family. We didn't even get into a lot of the things that we wanted to that we had on our pre-list, but we will have him on again. I'm serious. We could do 8 hours straight with Tom Clark just to.
We should pick a day where we just do like a massive stream where we stream for like 12 hours straight. And we just bring on like 12 different guests and just have them all go through.
Yeah, we just have like a 4-way. We have you and I and Tom and maybe another person, and we just sub in and out, and then just keep bringing in guest after guest after guest all day. But we would need to tie that to a charity and raise some money for something good.
That would be great.
So that's what we should do.
That would be great.
Matt, we're out of time.
Yeah, Mike, you got to go get some more cereal, man. You're looking a little winded here. You got to go gear up.
We'll be back tomorrow where we've got our first 2 guests at one time, and they're experts at this. So we're gonna ask them how to use this platform. We got Chris Barnes and Stu Williams from the Beef and Barnesy Show will be with us tomorrow, same time. And I have a special announcement tomorrow about Friday's show. So which will be Carolyn Doran Ballard, and we've got guests booked for next week already. And we're going to continue this thing rolling as long as we possibly can. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today, for supporting our show, for sharing and letting people know that we're even doing this. Once again, don't forget you can head over to InsideBowling.com if you want to support the show. Coupon code IBShow. IBShow is that coupon code. And you can help support us. It means a lot to us. So for Matt, for Tom Clark, I'm Mike. Thanks for joining us today here on the Inside Bowling Show. We'll see you tomorrow. Stay safe, stay healthy, everybody.